Fury, fearlessness, ferocity. You are a warrior. You don't just face the battle, you are the battle. The beast within you is a weapon to be unleashed, but even the mightiest blade needs a steady hand to wield it. Are you still the one holding the axe? Hey, it's Philmeyer. Let's talk about Warrior on controller. Warrior is the final tank layout I'll be covering, at least until a new tank job is added in a future expansion. My layout follows the same approach as my previous tank layouts. Tank roll actions stay at their familiar placements, and the approach is to place core global cooldown attacks on the base hotbar's face buttons, so I can stay mobile while working through my rotation. Warrior uses 2 cross hotbar sets, which means you'll need at least 3 hotbars. The first set focuses on single target attacks, and the second is used for area and ranged attacks. I switch between these sets by tapping the right shoulder button. This is a behavior you can set up in character configuration settings. If hotbar switching is new to you, check out my general cross hotbar guide, which is linked in the video description. Let's first walk through the layout, then we'll take a look at some alternatives and leveling tweaks you may want to consider. Warrior's basic global cooldown attacks are placed on the base hotbar's right trigger. On the single target set, these are Heavy Swing, Maim, Storm's Path, and Storm's Eye. These take up all 4 face buttons, which allows both single target attack combos to be performed from the same button cluster. On the AoE set, these actions are replaced with Overpower, Mithril Tempest, and Tomahawk. I need to point out that Tomahawk is a ranged attack that is not AoE specific. This takes a spot on the base AoE hotbar for compatibility with my other tank layouts. Keeping it here does mean you'll be switching back and forth between cross hotbar sets more often than with other layouts. If that's not your thing, I'll show some alternatives to this later in the video. Warrior has 2 frequently used off-global attacks that can be weaved in between its basic attacks. These are Upheaval and its AoE variant, Orogeny. Since these attacks share the same cooldown, they are placed independently on the crossbar sets. Upheaval takes one of the D-pad buttons on the single target set, and since we still have a face button free on the AoE set, Orogeny takes that spot. The remaining D-pad buttons on this trigger are for other off-global actions. Interject and Low Blow take their usual spots on the top and bottom buttons, which are conducive to fast interrupts. Bloodwetting takes the last D-pad spot. It has a short cooldown, and an experienced warrior will use it often. Keeping it grouped with the basic cooldown attacks allows it to be frequently weaved into the rotation. Let's move over to the base cross hotbar's left trigger. Warrior's primary gap closer, Onslaught, takes my preferred spot on the right face button. Like I've mentioned in other videos, I prefer this spot for gap closers whenever possible. Keeping it on a face button allows me to maintain control of my character with the left analog stick and then activate the skill with my right thumb when my target is within range. Next, the Wrath-powered attacks Fell Cleave and its AoE variant Decimate take the left face button. These are powerful, instant-use global cooldown attacks that really should be on face buttons. Primal Rend takes the top face button on both sets. This is another global cooldown attack, and interestingly, it's also a gap closer that forces Warrior into an animation lock. At level 100, Primal Rend also shares its button with Primal Ruination, which is a close-range global cooldown attack. Because of that, I think a face button feels best for these abilities, though I did consider a different approach, which I'll mention later in the video. Inner Release wraps up this button cluster. Since Inner Release activates Primal Rend and grants immediate use of Warrior's Wrath attacks, keeping them grouped together just makes sense. Having it on a face button allows for smooth combos with those skills while my character is in motion. Let's wrap up the base hotbar with the left trigger's D-pad. First, the tank roll mitigation skills Reprisal and Rampart take their common placements. These are used frequently in combat, and having them on the base hotbar makes them smoother to activate between global cooldown actions. Thrill of Battle is a warrior-specific defensive tool with a shorter cooldown than Warrior's remaining mitigations. Keeping it in this location makes it easy to activate either before or after taking a significant hit. The final D-pad slot goes to Infuriate. Infuriate grants an instant Wrath charge, allowing for immediately following up with a Wrath attack, so it makes most sense grouped on the same trigger as those actions. It can only be used while in combat, and it's an off-global action. For those reasons, it ends up on a D-pad slot, but I'm going to discuss this further in the leveling and alternatives part of the video. Let's move up to the double cross hotbar. Warrior's longer cooldown mitigations take the face buttons on the right trigger, which matches my other tank layouts. Provoke's position matches my other layouts as well. Keeping it on a face button allows for more easily using it while repositioning on the battlefield or when gathering aggro in a dungeon. Shirk and Arm's Length take their usual spots on the D-pad, again maintaining compatibility with my other layouts. Like I've mentioned in my other tank videos, Shirk can be replaced with a macro instead, removing the need to first target your co-tank before using it. And, like I've also mentioned in those videos, take caution if you decide to go that route, as accidentally using this macro when in a light party will unload aggro on your healer instead. These placements do leave a face button free on this trigger, which could be put to better use than doing nothing. I'll come back to this in the alternative section of the video. Alright, we're almost done with the layout. Warrior's tank stance action, Defiance, takes a spot on the left trigger's D-pad, matching my other tank layouts. Defiance doesn't need to be activated all that often, so it just needs to be somewhere, and this spot works fine. The left trigger's face buttons go to additional healing and defensive actions. Shake It Off has a number of effects, but the primary one is to create a defensive barrier for the entire party. It takes the bottom face button, which matches similar skills in my other layouts. Equilibrium is assigned to the top face button. It's a targetless self-heal, and its position again matches placements for similar skills I use in other jobs. Nascent Flash may be used to protect a targeted party member. In a full party, the recipient is likely to be your co-tank, which can be targeted without the D-pad through assist targeting or through a macro. Keeping this on a face button aids with mobility when the skill is used in that way. Finally, I keep an emergency potion slotted on all my tank layouts, and it takes the last button in this cluster. That's the core of my warrior layout, keeping the familiar flow from my other tank layouts, which are designed to maximize mobility while performing frequent actions. Just like my other job setups, sprint is assigned to L3 via macro 98, and assist targeting is assigned to R3 via macro 99. These can be configured in system settings. My extended hotbar is where I keep actions common to all jobs, such as limit break, target lock-on, and focus targeting macros. The extended cross hotbar can be enabled in character configuration settings. Now that we've walked through the layout, let's look at those alternatives and leveling considerations I've been mentioning throughout the video. First, with Tomahawk on the base AoE hotbar, my layout requires switching hotbar sets more often when going between single target ranged and melee attacks. The alternatives to this are the same as my other tank layouts. If you don't like this placement, you could alternatively move Tomahawk up into the free slot on the double cross hotbar instead. Or, if you'd like to keep Tomahawk more easily accessible on the base crossbar, you could choose to move Onslaught onto the extended cross hotbar, which would free up its slot for Tomahawk on both the single target and AoE sets. Next, my layout currently has one of the face buttons on the double cross hotbar free. This is because they are all used in my other tank layouts, and I wanted to maintain placements across them for muscle memory. If consistency between tank layouts isn't a concern for you, I'd recommend moving or duplicating Arm's Length into this slot, assuming you didn't use it for Tomahawk. This would allow for smoother activation of Arm's Length while in motion. Now, if you're still leveling Warrior, there are a few temporary tweaks I'd recommend to this layout as well. Like I mentioned at the start of the walkthrough, since Upheaval and Orogeny share a cooldown, they can exist independently on their respective crossbar sets. However, Orogeny is learned 22 levels after Upheaval, so there's a notable stretch of progression before Warrior has access to both of these skills. Until you've learned Orogeny, I'd recommend duplicating Upheaval into its position on the AoE hotbar. And, in fact, if you frequently run lower level content, even after learning Orogeny, I'd still recommend duplicating Upheaval into the free D-pad slot on the AoE hotbar, so you can more easily use it when you're level synced. Something similar applies to the left action trigger placements as well. A warrior only learns Primal Rend at level 90, and its second attack, Primal Ruination, is learned at level 100. That means that most of your career as a warrior will be spent without these attacks. Until you learn Primal Rend, I highly recommend keeping Infuriate slotted at its location instead. This allows for smoother overall use of Warrior's Wrath attacks. In fact, I debated leaving Infuriate on a face button for my final layout, but, especially with the addition of Primal Ruination at level 100, I think Primal Rend feels best on a face button and should displace Infuriate after level 90. Before I end the video, I'll run through an example combat rotation to demonstrate the layout's flow. Just like my other layout demos, the intention is to show function in a typical battle and not to maximize damage output. this video was helpful, a thumbs up on your way out is always appreciated. Now that I've published layouts for all the tank and caster jobs, my next videos will focus on physical DPS jobs. Let me know in the comments below if there's a job you'd really like to see. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.